Really good day. A lot of situational things, much cleaner as far as the penalties and the sloppiness. A lot more consistency in execution. We didn't do much. We kind of kept it based to see who could do what. So we limited what each side of the ball could do just to see who could execute the base stuff. And I thought they showed some commitment to the basics, just getting the line, playing with tempo, defensively, not jumping offside, knowing the situation, which I thought was really good. Offense probably had a little better day just because of the limits on defense. When I say limits of what coverage is and what blitzes and things that we normally would do. But I thought overall a much cleaner day. The ones and the twos pretty consistently moved the ball. There were some plays made on both sides of the ball with the first group. Our really, really young guys, once the play count got up, struggled a little bit, but that's to be expected. We got to continue to bring them along. A lot of those guys that are in that third group are freshmen, who just got into college. So got to bring them along because we don't know. We don't know at what point one of those guys is going to have to go in the game. One of those guys is going to have to play special teams. So a lot of good teach tape. Really impressed with the consistency from the older guys, even as, plays were made or weren't made. We moved on to the next play mentally. It was warm out there today, so the play count kind of doubled, when you talking about the heat on the turf. But overall, good day. Still got a long way to go. We got to be able now to put the basics of executing with the volume of the playbook, so we can get into some things to attack offenses and defenses on both sides of the ball.
Just looking at the scrimmage as a whole, who stood out the most to you?
I thought both quarterbacks moved their groups pretty efficiently. Marcus and Air did a really good job. Again, it was base stuff, but they were operating really, really smoothly. For the first time, they started pulling some balls and got their legs activated, which is a big piece of the offense. I thought they made good throws, catchable throws. I thought our receivers caught the ball well. I think Bryce Dorsey had a couple of really big catches down the field. Jermaine Hayes had some really big plays across the middle. Stonka keeps showing up, on the perimeter. It's a little tough to judge the running backs because we're thud and, I blow the whistle as soon as, someone gets close, just not to create a pile of guys. So you don't know, do they break tackles, but their reads were consistent. When they did get in open space, they were able to kind of make some guys miss. They caught the ball well out of the backfield. So defensively, that first group is pretty good. Even today, we were able to move the ball, so it was competitive when the ones on the ones were out there. We limited some of the guys' reps, but even when, the guys we feel pretty good about on both sides of the ball were out there, it was some back and forth. I thought our D-line did some things early in the scrimmage. We started getting to the, down the line guys, and that's where we got to keep bringing them along. Jamon Tapp played really well from a D-line perspective. Elijah Kinsler played really well from a D-line perspective, just standing out there. Jamari Ishmael made some plays in the third down period. But if I had to give who had the day, I would probably say the offense, quarterbacks, and the wideouts, just from the consistency. We've been big catch, circus catch it with one hand and two fingers and drop a hitch. Today we didn't have that. We had just consistent routes, coming back to the ball in the right location, making the right reads. Quarterbacks got it out on time. There weren't a lot of sacks in that first and second group because the quarterback was getting it out, which is what you want to be able to do with this type of offense.
You talked about this week the back half of the roster, guys, trying to elevate them or get to see what they're doing. Within that group, have you seen anyone kind of take the job?
Yeah, I think so because, we repped last week. The quarterbacks kind of went, with both groups, ones and twos. This week, Air went with the ones, one rep. Marcus went with the twos. So we kind of flipped it, not as much as last week. But even the 2-0 line this week was much more consistent, and that just comes from, they've had more reps. I think the two set of wide receivers, Bryce Dorsey, Brady Cluse, those guys were more consistent. So that's kind of the back half of the roster that we're talking about. Now, the freshmen are the freshmen. We got to get them into college football. But that second guy in, that third guy in, offensively did a really good job. Tough to see from a defensive perspective just because of what we did. We kind of kept everything in front of us, played coverage. But the second O-line did a really good job protecting. The second O-line did a really good job in the run game. Again, the second rotation of wideouts did a really good job catching the ball. I know it sounds remedial, but there's a lot to it because our routes are not defined as you do this, you do this. It's you do this if the defense tells you to. So not only from the mental piece, but from the execution piece, I thought it was pretty good.
You mentioned earlier in the week that when the first team D-line's in the game, the offense just hadn't been able to move the ball. So how did the first?
Today it was really good. It was good back and forth. I think they kind of took the challenge. And again, our offense operates off of movement and tempo, meaning moving the ball. Well, we practice most of the time, we keep the ball in the same spot, right? We move it from hash to hash. But our offense is good when we hit a play or get a first down and we're able to get to the line, and before the D-line gets set, we're snapping the ball. That's the beauty of tempo offense. In practice, it's a little more stagnant, if that makes sense. It's a play. All right, everybody get the next call. Everybody get their hand down. It's a play. So now you're able to get more calls in because it's scripted. Hey, I want to see a twist on this play from the defense. I want to see a blitz on this play from the defense. As the game goes, our defense, we got to call the game as in the flow of a game. Does that make sense? So if we get a first down, maybe you wanted to blitz on second and long, but you don't get them to second and long. Maybe you wanted to run a twist game, but the tempo doesn't allow you to get the call in or get it aligned. So I think the flow of the offense helped our guys. Now, we still got to be able to execute when we just put the ball down and play. But today we saw a little bit of how the tempo and flow of the offense helps the O-line. I thought it was really good back and forth today between that first group. There were some really big plays downfield, which means we protected well. Quarterback got the ball out. Receivers obviously made the right read. So today was much better than a normal practice, which it's designed that way. In normal practice, we have a team period. It says team run. Well, you shouldn't play the drill, but if I'm a safety in team run, I'm probably leaning a little bit more to coming down in the box. Well, in a game setting, I got to kind of read it out. So part of the way we practice is to put our guys in the toughest position to make them execute. When we get to August, we'll have some more kind of spot the ball and play it situations in practice to give us a little bit more feel for where we are. But right now, it's team run. We're going to run the ball for 16 plays. And you know it, we're running it. They know it, we're running it. Let's see your best run, awareness. Now, some of that leads to, well, we would have pulled it and threw a bubble, or we would have pulled it and RPO'd. Yeah, that's part of it. But we still got to be able to run the ball. For me, that's like 4 minutes, right? We want to run the ball when we need to run the ball. Same thing on the other side, defensively. We need to stop the run when we need to stop the run. So practice gives you a little bit of a jaded view sometimes if you don't understand what we're trying to get out of it. Today kind of balances both. We know what we can do with the flow of the offense. We know what we need to do when we were working on certain situations.
Coach, you mentioned last Saturday that your guys always seem to be in game day mode no matter what the arena is. How do you feel like they responded out here today?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of a combination. They showed up, and obviously being in the stadium for the first time, there were a lot of guys that were excited. And then the heat kind of slapped them across the face, so they got right back into where we normally practice mode, which was good. But I think, again, our guys are starting to understand how we practice. I challenged them a little bit. I said, look, let's not go over here tomorrow. This was yesterday. Let's not go over here tomorrow and lose our minds because they put some aluminum seats around us. I don't think we did that. Our penalties were way down, which typically means there's high focus. Our sloppiness was way down, which typically means there's high focus. So I think they handled it well. We've got a mature group. We're really, really old in some spots, and we're really, really young. So we've got guys who can kind of balance it and understand, hey, we're going out here to execute. Obviously, there's an excitement about playing the game. Don't get me wrong. But I thought they handled it well.
When you look at recruiting so far, and I know Coach Salisbury coming in, we've seen the recruits coming in, the momentum. What has he meant to that and kind of the operation you guys have?
Yeah, I think he's been obviously huge because a lot of these recruits, especially here in the city of Memphis and surrounding area, a lot of these guys, he's known them or their parents since they were little league, which creates a comfort zone when these kids and parents come to, our facility or come watch us practice or come, visit, because now that's a familiar face that you've known for 15 or 20 years. A couple of the parents he went to school with, and they're talking about pictures of him in the 4th grade, and it just creates a certain level of comfort, and I think that helps create a certain level of trust. They know Coach Salisbury because of the relationship they've had with him. He's not going to tell them a lie. He's going to take care of their kids. He wouldn't put himself in an environment that he didn't feel comfortable about. So that's really helped. There's a lot of really, really good football players in this area in the next 2 classes. We've got to continue, and trust me, there's a lot of good schools, don't get me wrong. We've got to continue to show them that Memphis is the place for them. And I think when you have familiar faces and you have relational connections, that helps.
As you continue to grow with this team, describe this team with one word.
Tough. They're tough. What we do is not easy. There's a lot of guys that have come from other schools and they say, Coach, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. Typically, when you do something extremely hard, it's something extremely rewarding on the other side. The difficult part as a coach is I can't guarantee when that reward will come, right? If we go out to play a game and we turn the ball over and we don't tackle and we drop passes, we can work harder than coal miners, but we're not going to win. But I do think once you create a certain level of toughness, and toughness in our program is not punch a wall or run your fist through a window. Toughness in our program is doing what you have to do even when you don't want to do it. That's tough.
You guys recruited a lot of size in recruiting this year. How impressed are you with your new batch of offensive linemen?
That's a Coach Saban thing. Big people fight big people in boxing for a reason, and big people beat up on little people. So we have some very strict size parameters, and that's kind of been something that over the years has helped us be better later in games, better later in the season. We still can't have big, bad football players, right? They still have to be able to execute. But I think the size gives us an opportunity. I mean, we're battling a really good D-line and O-line every day. I don't know if we'll face that every week in the season. There's going to be some teams that have one or the other, and they're good at what they do. But I think over time, the sparring that we do every day will prepare us for the match when we get to game days. That does not mean it becomes easy, but if you're a heavyweight and you're sparring with a lightweight and then you go fight a heavyweight, well, your rhythm's off, But if you've been sparring all week with a heavyweight and then you go fight a heavyweight, you got better chance for carryover, and that's what we're trying to get.